In the quiet Vladimir region, east of Moscow, life moved at a gentle pace. Rolling fields and sleepy villages dotted the landscape, a world away from the front lines of war. For generations, families here had known peace, their routines shaped by the rhythms of rural Russia. But on the week of April 22, 2025, everything changed. What began as an ordinary day was violently interrupted when a cataclysmic explosion shattered the calm, lighting up the night sky and sending shockwaves through the community. The source was the 51st Arsenal, a sprawling military depot hidden among the forests. In a matter of moments, it erupted in a series of devastating blasts, each more powerful than the last. A towering mushroom cloud rose above the treetops, visible for miles, while the ground trembled beneath the force of the explosions. This was no ordinary accident. The depot was a critical hub for Russia's war effort, storing everything from artillery shells to advanced missiles. Its destruction meant a significant blow to the Russian military's ability to sustain its operations, especially in Ukraine. The inferno raged for hours, consuming vast stores of munitions and leaving behind a landscape of twisted metal and smoldering debris. Emergency crews struggled to contain the blaze, but the damage was already done. Russia's supply lines had been crippled in a single devastating night. For local residents, the event was a nightmare come to life. Windows shattered from the force of the blasts, and thick, acrid smoke filled the air, choking the village streets and blotting out the sun. Panic swept through the villages as families grabbed what they could and fled their homes, unsure if more explosions would follow. The sense of safety that had defined their lives was gone in an instant. The world took notice. News of the explosion dominated headlines, with analysts debating whether this was a tragic accident or a bold Ukrainian strike deep inside Russian territory. The implications were enormous, and speculation ran rampant. The answer would signal a new, dangerous phase in the conflict, one where Ukraine demonstrated unprecedented reach into Russia's heartland, and where the boundaries of the war were suddenly and dramatically redrawn. The destruction of the 51st Arsenal dealt a staggering blow to Russia's military reserves. Ukrainian officials estimated the loss at 100,000 tons of weaponry, worth $1.50 billion, vaporized in a single day. The depot's stockpile included artillery shells, rockets, anti-tank missiles, and possibly advanced precision weapons. This loss immediately created severe shortages for Russian units on the front, forcing commanders to ration ammunition and rethink their strategies. Replacing such a vast arsenal is a logistical nightmare, especially under international sanctions and strained production lines. The loss of both modern and reserve Soviet-era munitions removed Russia's crucial buffer, exposing a deep vulnerability. Artillery dominance has been Russia's edge in Ukraine. Now, that advantage is in jeopardy. The event could degrade entire army groups, opening new opportunities for Ukrainian forces. Despite Kremlin claims of an accident, evidence pointed to a deliberate Ukrainian strike. The depot's location, over 300 miles from Ukraine, made a random fire unlikely. Ukraine has developed long-range drones and missiles capable of evading Russian air defenses and striking deep targets. The attack fit Ukraine's strategy: disrupt Russia's logistics far from the front, starving its army of ammunition before it reaches the battlefield. Ukrainian officials remained vague about the weapon used, keeping Moscow guessing. This was the latest in a series of deep strikes, each one eroding Russia's sense of security. By targeting supply lines, Ukraine forces Russia onto the defensive, shifting the war's momentum. The strike on the 51st Arsenal was a clear message: nowhere in Russia is truly safe. Russia's Ministry of Defense was quick to respond, immediately blaming the disaster on a supposed safety violation. This explanation, however, has become a familiar tactic, one often used to deflect attention from deeper vulnerabilities within Russia's military infrastructure. By pointing to human error or procedural lapses, Moscow attempts to maintain an image of control and competence, even as cracks begin to show. The arsenal's long history of past accidents provided Moscow with a convenient cover story, allowing officials to suggest that this was just another unfortunate mishap. Yet the sheer scale of destruction, visible in the aftermath, told a very different story, one that hinted at a far more significant event than a simple safety lapse. Russian state media quickly moved to downplay both the casualties and the extent of the damage, echoing the official narrative. However, independent reports from journalists on the ground painted a starkly different picture, with eyewitnesses describing chaos and devastation that far exceeded the government's account. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials, while stopping short of openly claiming responsibility, seized the opportunity to highlight the strategic impact of the incident. Their statements were carefully worded, but they left little doubt about Ukraine's possible involvement, hinting at a new level of reach and capability. This information war played out across global screens, Russia projecting an image of control and resilience, while Ukraine showcased its growing ability to strike deep behind enemy lines. The world watched as both sides vied to shape the narrative. For international observers and analysts, the pattern of recent Ukrainian deep strikes, combined with mounting evidence on the ground, made Kyiv's version of events far more credible. Satellite images and eyewitness accounts only reinforced this perception. The incident exposed significant cracks in Russia's carefully constructed narrative, while simultaneously emboldening Ukraine's psychological campaign. Social media buzzed with speculation, memes, and analysis, amplifying the psychological impact far beyond the battlefield. For those willing to look beyond official statements and read between the lines, the truth was increasingly clear. The battle for perception had become as important as the battle on the ground. For civilians near the arsenal, the explosion was a nightmare come to life. The initial blast shattered windows and sent shrapnel raining down on homes, forcing a chaotic evacuation. Social media filled with videos of fiery debris and terrified families fleeing the danger. Authorities declared a state of emergency and ordered mass evacuations as roads clogged with desperate residents. Official claims of no casualties were quickly challenged by reports of injuries and widespread trauma. The psychological shock was profound. War had arrived on their doorstep, shattering any sense of safety. Environmental contamination and economic disruption now threatened the region's future. Trust in authorities eroded as the official narrative rang hollow to those who lived through the chaos. The community, once distant from the war, now bears its scars. Independent evidence quickly overwhelmed official narratives. Satellite images revealed the arsenal reduced to blackened craters, confirming the scale of destruction. Social media videos captured the chaos, mushroom clouds, relentless detonations, and munitions raining on civilian areas. This flood of raw footage contradicted sanitized state reports and mapped the true extent of the disaster. Analysts used this data to pinpoint strike locations and assess the impact, bypassing Russian censorship. The pattern of multiple explosions suggested a coordinated, targeted attack, not an accident. The world saw the truth, a devastating, deliberate strike engineered from afar. The arsenal's destruction was part of Ukraine's broader campaign to cripple Russia's war machine. Since late 2024, Ukraine has struck deep inside Russian territory, targeting depots, command posts, and fuel facilities. Recent attacks destroyed thousands of Russian drones and decimated ammunition stocks meant for elite units. Strikes on energy infrastructure have worsened Russia's fuel shortages, hampering its military mobility. Special operations have hit logistics hubs far from the front, proving Ukraine's reach and precision. This relentless campaign forces Russia to divert air defenses from the front, stretching its resources thin. Psychologically, it shatters the illusion of safety for Russians far from the battlefield. The strike on the 51st Arsenal stands as the most dramatic proof that Ukraine can threaten any strategic target in European Russia. The destruction of the 51st Arsenal marks a pivotal turning point in the war, sending shockwaves through both military and civilian circles. This event is not just a tactical victory, but a symbol of shifting momentum on the battlefield. The scale of the devastation has forced both sides to reconsider their strategies and priorities. Ukraine's newfound ability to strike deep into Russian territory fundamentally changes the conflict's dynamics. No longer confined to defensive operations, Ukraine now demonstrates it can reach far beyond the front lines, targeting critical infrastructure and supply lines that were once thought untouchable. Russian forces now face mounting ammunition shortages and must ration their firepower, weakening their frontline operations. The loss of key depots means resupply is slower and less reliable, putting additional pressure on already stretched units and forcing commanders to make difficult choices about where to allocate dwindling resources. The psychological impact within Russia is profound. No region feels safe. and public confidence in the Kremlin is shaken. Ordinary citizens, once distant from the realities of war, now feel its reach, as fear and uncertainty ripple through society and the government faces growing scrutiny. Moscow must now make a critical choice: protect the front lines or defend the homeland, stretching its military thin. Redeployments and shifting priorities risk leaving gaps in both defense and offense, complicating Russia's ability to respond effectively to new threats. For Ukraine, the strike is a powerful morale boost and proof that investment in long-range weapons pays off. Soldiers and civilians alike are energized by this success, seeing it as evidence that determination and innovation can yield real results on the battlefield. The war is entering a new and unpredictable phase, one defined by deep strikes, attritional warfare, and relentless targeting of logistics. Both sides must adapt quickly, as the ability to disrupt supply chains and infrastructure becomes a decisive factor in the conflict's outcome. The fire that consumed the arsenal may have illuminated a new path for Ukraine, where ingenuity, resilience, and resolve can shift the tides of war. Each strike now carries not just tactical significance but also the potential to reshape the broader strategic landscape. The world is watching closely as the conflict evolves, with the balance of power now in flux. International actors are reassessing their positions, and the next moves on both sides could have far-reaching consequences for the region and beyond.